In 1845, a completely invisible killer landed on the shores of Ireland. Within weeks, fields of healthy green plants turned into a black, rotting mush that smelled like decaying flesh. Over the next few years, this single plant disease wiped out an entire country's food supply, killed 1 million people, and forced another 2 million to flee their homes. It remains one of the deadliest humanitarian disasters in modern history. But this wasn't just a localized tragedy. It was the brutal breaking point of a plant that had already spent the last 3 centuries silently building, collapsing, and rebuilding the entire modern world. Every single thing about our modern lives, from the skyscrapers in New York to the population boom in Europe, traces back to a humble, dirty root that grows entirely in the dark. Long before European empires even knew the Americas existed, people were surviving on this root in places where almost nothing else could grow. If you travel 10,000 feet up into the Andes Mountains of Peru and Bolivia, the air is thin, the nights are freezing, and traditional crops like corn or wheat instantly wither and die. But around 8,000 years ago, the Inca and their ancestors discovered that an underground tuber could thrive in this brutal terrain. They didn't just eat it, they engineered their entire civilization around it. They figured out how to freeze-dry them using the natural mountain climate, stamping out the moisture with their feet and leaving them out in the freezing night air. This created a lightweight, shelf-stable food called chuño that could last for 10 years without spoiling. It was the ultimate insurance policy against famine. When the Inca Empire expanded, it was fueled entirely by these massive storehouses of dried potatoes. But the potato had a dark secret that the Inca learned to manage, but Europeans would soon learn the hard way. Wild potatoes are packed with glycoalkaloids, which are literal toxins designed to poison animals that try to eat them. The Inca carefully bred the poisons out over generations, but the plant still retained an evolutionary trait that would later trigger a global catastrophe. It clones itself. When you plant a piece of a potato, you aren't growing a new genetic variant. You are growing an exact genetic copy of the parent. When Spanish conquistadors marched into the Andes in the 1500s looking for gold and silver, they completely ignored the true treasure growing in the dirt. They saw the local people eating these strange lumps and thought it was fit only for animals. Eventually, a few Spanish sailors threw some potatoes into their ship, holds just to keep themselves from starving on the long voyage back home. When the potato finally landed in Europe, it faced an immediate, massive wave of hostility. People look at a potato today and see a staple food, but the Europeans of the 16th and 17th centuries looked at it and saw absolute terror. Because it grew underground and didn't mention it anywhere in the Bible, religious leaders claimed it was the creation of witches. Doctors openly warned that eating potatoes would give you leprosy, syphilis, or brain damage. Herbalists noticed that the leaves looked exactly like deadly nightshade, which makes sense because they belong to the exact same botanical family. For over 100 years, the potato was banned, feared, or used exclusively to feed prison inmates and pigs. He planted a massive field of potatoes around his royal palace and ordered heavy military guards to protect it day and night. He told the guards to purposely do a bad job and look away if anyone tried to sneak in. The local peasants saw the guards and assumed the king was protecting an incredibly valuable royal delicacy. That very night, locals snuck into the fields, stole the plants, and started growing them in their own gardens. In France, a man named Antoine Augustin Parmentier used a similar trick. He had been captured during the 7 Years' War and forced to live on nothing but potatoes in a Prussian prison. He returned to Paris shocked that he was healthier than ever. He started throwing high society dinner parties where every single dish, from the soup to the dessert, was made entirely of potatoes. He even invited Benjamin Franklin to one of these dinners. Suddenly, the potato went from a feared, toxic weed to the most valuable economic weapon on Earth. The numbers behind this shift are staggering. An acre of land planted with wheat can feed a small family, but that exact same acre planted with potatoes can produce 3 to 4 times more food. It requires almost no tools, just a spade to dig them up. Even better, potatoes are one of the only foods on the planet that contain almost every single vitamin and nutrient a human body needs to survive. If you eat potatoes and drink milk, your body gets enough vitamin C, potassium, iron, and protein to live a long, healthy life. This sudden burst of massive nutrition completely altered human history. Before the potato, Europe's population was stuck in a hard ceiling because agricultural yields couldn't keep up with human births. Once the potato became the default peasant food, the mortality rate plummeted. Babies survived infancy, adults lived longer, and within a few generations, the population of Europe doubled. This massive explosion of healthy, cheap labor is the exact fuel that ignited the Industrial Revolution. Millions of people who used to farm wheat were suddenly free to move into cities, work in coal mines, and build factories. If you find it wild how a single root sidestepped thousands of years of human starvation, drop a like on the video, share it with a friend who loves history, and subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive. The British Empire, the rise of industrial Germany, and the entire modern urban world were built directly on the calories provided by this single plant. But Europe had completely forgotten the dangerous evolutionary trait the Inca warned about. They were growing millions of acres of potatoes using the exact same genetic clone. By the 1840s, nearly half the population of Ireland depended on just one single variety of potato, called the lumper, for their survival. An adult Irish laborer would eat up to 14 pounds of lumpers every single day. They didn't eat meat, they didn't eat vegetables, and they didn't eat grain. It was an incredibly fragile agricultural monoculture, a massive ticking time bomb waiting for a single spark. That spark came from a microscopic fungal parasite called Phytophthora infestans. It traveled across the Atlantic Ocean on ships from the Americas and hit Ireland with absolute, merciless speed. The summer of 1845 started out completely normal, but in late summer the air turned unusually cold and damp. The fungus spread through the air, carried by the wind from field to field. A farmer could look out at his green, flourishing crop in the morning, and by nightfall, the entire field would turn into a black, liquefied sludge. The potatoes beneath the soil rotted into a foul-smelling liquid. When the people dug into the earth to salvage their food, their hands came up covered in black slime. The scale of the horror is difficult to process. Parents watched their children's skin turn blue from starvation. People resorted to eating grass, weeds, and diseased animals just to survive. The British government, which ruled Ireland at the time, made the disaster infinitely worse. Driven by a rigid belief in free market economics and widespread anti-Irish prejudice, they refused to stop exporting grain and livestock from Ireland while the people starved. Huge ships guarded by British soldiers left Irish ports filled with food destined for English markets, leaving the Irish to die by the side of the road. By the time the famine finally receded in 1852, Ireland's population had dropped by a staggering 25%. The trauma of the Great Famine changed the demographics of the world forever. Millions of desperate, starving Irish immigrants boarded crowded, disease-ridden vessels known as coffin ships and crossed the Atlantic. They flooded into cities like Boston, New York, and Chicago, building the infrastructure of a rising American superpower. You would think humanity would have learned its lesson after the Irish catastrophe, but instead, the fight to protect the potato from disease triggered the birth of the modern chemical industry. When farmers looked for ways to stop bugs and blights from eating their crops, they turned to heavy chemistry. In the late 1800s, American farmers discovered that dusting their potato fields with an arsenic-based green dye killed beetles instantly. This was the birth of the first mass-produced chemical pesticide. Today, the commercial potato industry is locked in a never-ending arms race against nature, spraying fields with intense cocktails of chemicals just to keep the clones alive. Look at a global map today, and you will see the potato everywhere. It is the world's third most important food crop. It is grown in the deserts of Egypt, the plains of China, and the high-tech automated farms of Idaho. Space agencies like NASA are actively testing ways to grow potatoes in simulated Martian soil, meaning the very same route that allowed the Inca to build an empire in the freezing Andes might be the food that allows humans to colonize the stars. The next time you look at something as simple as a French fry or a bag of potato chips, remember that you aren't just looking at a side dish. You are looking at a hyper-efficient, underground engine of human history. It doubled the population of Europe, built the workforce that created our industrial world, triggered a massive global migration, and showed us exactly how fragile our entire food system truly is. It is the unassuming crop that quite literally conquered the world.